turbulence of experience in industrialized, urbanized societies. And you have to bear with me as we go through this, because they're telling you really how it works. Himself a collaborator in the prolific German artist Bertolt Brecht, Benjamin worked with Brecht on films, created radio plays, and attempted to utilize the media as organs of social progress. In the essay, The Artist as Producer, 1999, Benjamin argued that progressive culture, and this is what they call them, progressive cultural creators should refunction the apparatus of cultural production. Turning theatre and film, for instance, into a forum of political enlightenment, that can also be said to be propaganda, and discussion rather than a medium of culinary audience pleasure. Both Brecht and Benjamin wrote radio plays and were interested in film as an instrument of progressive social change. In an essay on radio theory, Brecht anticipated the Internet in his call for reconstructing the apparatus of broadcasting from one-way transmission to a more interactive form of two-way or multiple communication, a form first realized in CB radio and then electronically mediated computer communication. So these guys were way ahead on what was coming up. Now, were they just good guessers, or did they have such fantastic faith in the progress of science? Remember, Arthur C. Clarke, another sci-fi writer, was way ahead too. Where did he get his knowledge? He got a Nobel Prize for predicting that satellites would revolve around the Earth and be used for incredible communication devices. But he was in on the big institutes, which were way ahead already on a lot of this science. That's how it was done. Moreover, Benjamin wished to promote a radical culture and media politics concerned with the creation of alternative oppositional cultures. Yet he recognized that media such as film could have conservative effects. While he thought it was progressive that mass-produced works were losing their aura, their magical force, and were opening cultural artifacts for more critical and political discussion, he recognized that film could create a new kind of ideological magic through the cult of celebrity. So they dreamed up the cult of celebrity and techniques like that, a close-up that fetishized certain stars or images via the technology of the cinema. They realized they could create stars, in other words, that people would follow. But the idea, too, was to use these stars to promote the new culture, a political culture. And that's what we have today, too. You'll often see stars getting pulled out to give their opinions on something. But as others have noted, can a star have any more insight into politics than your average plumber? We don't think of it that way. We just think that they're famous, they're well-known, they must be brighter than we are because they're up there, and therefore whatever they say must be better than our own theories. So we adopt their theory. Benjamin was thus one of the first radical cultural critics to look carefully at the form and technology of media culture in appraising its complex nature and effects. What do we have today? Doesn't matter what paper you look at, what newspaper, or even watch the TV news, or even Google or Yahoo or whatever. You're going to get all the boob babes and their fallouts and their romances, etc. as they come and go and come and go and come and go forever. That's all due to these guys from the Frankfurt School. And using Bernays techniques, they mixed this in with regular media. Moreover, he developed a unique approach to cultural history that is one of his most enduring legacies, constituting a micrological history of Paris in the 18th century, an uncompleted project that contains a wealth of material for study and reflection. And I give you the names of the books here. Max Horkheimer and T.W. Adorno answered Benjamin's optimism in a highly influential analysis of the culture industry, published in their book Dialectic of Enlightenment, which first appeared in 1948 and was translated into English in 1972. They argued that the system of cultural production dominated by film, radio broadcasting, newspapers and magazines, and that included music and everything, was controlled by advertising and commercial imperatives and served to create subservience to the system of consumer capitalism. While later critics pronounced their approach too manipulative, reductive and elitist, It provided an important corrective to more populist approaches to media culture that downplay the way the media industries exert power over audiences and help produce thought and behavior that conforms to the existing society. So that was initially the conflict. As I say, you've got the power established as it already is, and you have a culture that's come out through consumerism, this altered behavior. As I said before, if you want to alter behavior, you alter something in the environment of the subject. And that's what you buy. That's what you put in your home. That's that little box you turn on and stare at and get hypnotized by, for instance. And here's this other group that came in who were Trotskyite and thought the dispossessed. They had no country, they said, no country left. And they had an agenda to take over this industry and use it for even further political Trotskyite purposes. Now, Trotsky, as I've said before, believed in this Marxism that was to do with evolution. It was coupled with Darwinism. Remember that Darwin himself had the offer from Karl Marx. Karl Marx wanted to put him in his book to thank him because he had validated this communist belief by giving out his theories on evolution. After all, the whole idea before that, the society prior to that was due to, it was a very fixed society. You had a sort of religious overtone in every country, with a head of that country who was the head of the religion. And in comes Darwinism and threw it all out the window. I'll be back with more after this break. Hi folks, I'm Alan Watt and we're cutting through the matrix, going through what most people would see as very boring material, but it's in this kind of material where you find how not just us, not just we, but those before us were manipulated by organized groups, well-funded groups, and finding the funding of these groups is almost impossible, but they certainly were incredibly well-funded. And they were pushed to the top in all Western countries, mainly the US and Britain. Many of them also worked during the World War II with the OSS. And some of them even wrote books, novels. The idea being that through novels you could change the thinking of people. If you gave them a straight non-fictional work, they might be too prejudiced to go through it with preconditioned prejudices. But if you write something in a novel form, your mind can be altered as you get caught up in the story and taken through the process. And that's sometimes what they call it in these novels. It's a process. It's a mind-altering process where you'll actually be downloaded with things that you previously would have rejected on a cultural basis or a personal basis or a racial or ethnic basis or anything else. The Frankfurt School also provides useful historical perspectives on the transition from traditional culture and modernism in the arts to a mass-produced media and consumer society. In his path-breaking book, The Structural Transformation of the Public Sphere, Jürgen Habermas further historicizes Adorno and Horkheimer's analysis of the culture industry. And I keep harping on this, and it's right in here, the culture industry. We've been brought up to think it's an entertainment industry there to amuse us. And it's got nothing to do with amusing us. That's a secondary effect. It's to alter your thoughts and your way you see things and think about things. And the conclusions you'll come to are all in the movies. They know which conclusions you will come to. Providing historical background to the triumph of the culture industry, Habermas notes how bourgeois middle-class society in the late 18th and 19th century was distinguished by the rise of a public sphere that stood between civil society and the state, and which mediated between public and private interests. For the first time in history, individuals and groups could shape public opinion, giving direct expression to their needs and interests while influencing political practice.